Welcome to the Finance Commission meeting of Monday, July 8th. We're located in the Robert M. Thornton Room in Town Hall. Purpose of the meeting today is to clean up items at the end of the fiscal year, as well as to talk about the recent override and what the Finance Commission would like to do to try to monitor that during the upcoming fiscal year and fiscal years afterwards. So with that, Tom, I guess you would like to introduce someone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight I'm delighted to introduce a new member of the accounting department. Why don't you stand, Molly? There you go. Molly Hearn.
Nice to meet you all.
So
Hello.
Molly comes to us from the town of Needham. So she worked at the Department of Public Works, and she did a lot of stuff there. But basically, she wants to have a career as the CFO of the town. So it's perfect. So. And she graduated from Salve Regina College University in Newport, and she also has her Master's of Business Administration from there. And she's also certified as an Associate Massachusetts Certified Purchasing Officer. And so she's got a lot of good background there. And then recently she completed a joint program of the MMA with Suffolk Municipal Finance Management Seminar Program. So that was, I think, about 10 Fridays that they worked on that, and she recently graduated with that, along with Sue Bartlett, who's in our IT department. So, and there they learned a lot about municipal budgeting, municipal accounting, treasury functions, and property assessment. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Tom, and again, Molly, welcome. Good luck working here, and look forward to working with you. Okay.
For all of us.
Yep, good. All right, next item on the agenda, reserve fund transfer request. Tom, there are none at this point?
That is correct.
Okay. Good, okay. Municipal relief requests, we have several today.
Is it possible to just accept the minutes before that? Just so
Oh, the minute, sure. Okay, we
minutes
could,
of, May 20th.
we could do that.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of May 30th, May 20th. I'll second it.
Can you do that if you weren't there?
Yes, under Robert's rules you can.
Can I just
Yeah,
check?
just
Yeah.
one change. I think we need to recollect who it was, but Judy, you weren't there, right, on the 20th, so you couldn't have seconded the motion to adjourn. So it must have been one of us.
I think it was Kelly.
Kelly? All right.
Okay.
So we just change on the motion by Mrs. Langone, just change that to Kelly.
I don't have
Yeah.
anything in here. Oh, yeah, okay,
Okay.
motion, okay.
All right, so that'll be changed
Just
to
notice that, though.
I was channeling you.
channeling your inner Judy.
It was 10:55 at night.
I was.
All right.
Maybe the clerk
Everybody-
was there.
Okay, with that change, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, municipal relief requests.
Department of Public Works, not here. Oh, sorry, Mark.
Mark, how are you?
Very good. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission,
Good to see you.
nice to see you all. Beautiful day. So Public Works, we're here to seek a municipal relief transfer to fund the Public Works overtime budget, which is an annual thing. Typically, we're coming back in front of you looking for these transfers, and we're looking to transfer $7,609.07 from the Public Works laborers' salary budget to Public Works overtime. And this would bring the Public Works overtime to $176,791. And this compares to fiscal 18, $167,990, and fiscal 17, $151,364. And basically, these are overtime incurred for things that we just can't control. After-hour callbacks for utility markouts, for emergency gas repairs. Verizon is notorious after hours. our own utilities. But more recently, we had a water main break and also some work helping out Jimmy Collins in the light department on that electric manhole.
Okay.
So request is for 760907.
Can I just ask a question? We're in agreement that the amount is 760907?
Well, that's what he's
I have
requesting, but
8,000.
I changed it to 8,000 just to round it off in case there's any last minute.
Okay.
Last
stuff.
minute?
And
Sure.
Obviously, anything extra would flow back into free
Free
cash
cash.
if it's not
Okay.
used.
Correct.
And it will, it'll come, there's enough money in the labor salary account to do that?
Yes, it's,
Plenty.
yes.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I would just like to remind, which I know most people in here know this is not new money, it's transferred within the budget itself. So
Correct.
there's no special request, it's an internal transfer.
That's right.
Okay.
Sure.
Yep. Ann.
First of all, and to add to what Judy said, we usually take care of these at town meeting, and sometimes it's impossible to do that. And this isn't an outrageous amount of money or anything, but since we've had to do this over the last few years, what can we do? You got any ideas yet? Let's float them, because I don't like to do this. I think that it should be done in front of town meeting.
So
And-
there's a couple things there. One of them is I think the DPW overtime line is probably a little under budgeted as a whole. We cut it awfully close. What every other town in the Commonwealth does is your overtime line versus your regular salaries line, you're not appropriating them separately. We didn't do that this year. And what usually happens, especially you have somebody go down during the year, go down's a terrible word, you have somebody who, let's say, leaves
Right.
service for 6 months, so you build up that surplus in one account versus the other. So some of these will correct themselves next year that we won't need to do a transfer. Police and public safety are an example. A police officer leaves for a couple months, you replace them at overtime, you've got that money in the salaries budget. So most of these will correct themselves next year without the need for a municipal relief transfer. However, I think we're budgeting that DPW overtime account too close to the limit.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a big bad water break, big water line break, and you could have 4, 6, 8 guys out there for 10 or 12 or 14 hours. So we just cut that a lot closer than any of our other overtime lines. So I think that's half the problem will get solved, is already effectively solved. The other half is in the FY21 budget, we really got to look at the DPW overline because I think it's just under budget.
I have another
Okay.
question related to that, if you don't mind.
I have a question,
Is
too.
that, now, are we behind in our infrastructure that we need to pay more attention to it? That is something that is causing difficulties with our water and sewer pipes and...
We have an old system, we have an old water system, we have an old sewer system, but we've been investing a lot of money over the past few years in both of them, so we are making headway there to improve the system so we don't have so many water leaks, we don't have as many sewer backups.
We don't, we're doing better.
We're making the effort to do it better, but I
Okay.
mean,
We
we have
haven't
a
gotten there
very,
yet.
very old system.
Yeah.
And you're always going to have, in the construction that they, I mean, nowadays when you put in a pipe, and Mr. Slater second this, that you put in a nice bed of gravel and stone. Years ago, they would bring it right to the bedrock and lay the pipe right on top of it, and, you know, that's something we can't control no matter.
Also look at the length of pipe, too. Those days compared to what you do now, it'd be like,
Right.
2-foot VC pipe versus what do you
Right.
have, like 13 feet now?
13 feet, yes. So,
Big
Okay,
difference.
I just want to, I think I want to say to you is, when you're budgeting, talk to us and let us know that, if there are things that you can do to stop this, then let us know and we can talk about it,
sure,
okay?
All right.
absolutely.
Kelly?
Back to what Mr. Mizuko said. Mr. Mizuko, is there a reason why we have to break out the salary line items by overtime and regular pay? It's all salary. Why do we necessarily care?
So prior to, so you always want to have an idea what your regular salary is. So when you do your budget projection, if we've got 40 employees and here's the projected salary, that number we know we need. The overtime number is more of a guess. You don't always know exactly what you're going to need. But what we've done in the past is we've appropriated them separately, which necessitates these types of transfers
Right.
to just move one from the other. We didn't do that for this current budget year because
Okay.
no other town does it that way. Because again, you're often moving between one and the other based on where you are. And police is a better example than DPW to an extent, but you have a couple officers who are away, well, your regular salary line has a surplus, but your overtime goes up. And the DPW is similar. You have somebody who goes down, and we don't have an, I gotta stop using that term, goes down, but you have an employee who leaves and it's 3 months before we fill them. Well, that's 3 months of salary that we don't use, but that usually necessitates more overtime. So it's just, it's a funky way we budgeted up until now that will sort of correct itself. For most towns, this is your salary line, this is your overtime line. We have a little bit more detail on public safety because it's a little bit more complex, whereas the DPW overtime is a little bit more straightforward. But we've half corrected it, although I still think we cut it a little too close. And to compare it to the electric department, for an example, we can make some repairs to electric lines, we can move the power around and everyone's power can get back on, and then we can come back during the week and fix things later. When a water pipe goes down, we can't do that. It's once you start fixing it, you've got to actually fix it. It's not a, well, we've kind of temporarily patched it and call it a day. You got to get the water back on, you got to get the sewer flowing.
So can I ask one last question?
Go
Do we
ahead.
have an annual, obviously we have a certain percentage that's allocated for overtime. Do we do annual budget trend trafficking of how much of our regular salary actually goes to overtime on a yearly basis and then budget based on that?
Sure, we do. That the problem is that total salary line, one bad water break could be $15,000 or $20,000. So it's you go a good year where you didn't have any water breaks or any serious ones, and it's great. So it fluctuates and bounces up and down, and it comes into competition with everything else that we budget. I mean, we should say, well, if we're averaging $180,000 in overtime a year, let's budget $220. You know that we're just about always going to be safe. But then what happens? We don't want to cut something else just to budget enough there. So we try to increase it. We try to trend analysis it. But when this one we seem to come a little bit short. As Mark said, it's gone up annually, which usually happens based on salary increases. We should probably be budgeting 5% over what we average, 10% over, so we have a little bit of a buffer, because that average could go way up or down, but it comes into competition with everything else. It's probably a little too tight on this one.
But for
Right.
fiscal 20, we are not only changing our software to Tyler Munis, but we're adopting the Uniform Massachusetts accounting system. So you'll recall now we have salaries as a
Right.
group, code 1. All other expenses, code 2. So all those salaries are together now, even though that we keep track of them individually, so we know. And then there's a third category for capital assets.
Yep, okay. Bob?
Yeah, I think, Tony, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this year it will hit 176, last couple of years 167 and 151. And I think that will make 3 straight years where the actuals are higher than the budgeted amount. So this year I checked the book and I think we're budgeted at 130. So I suspect you're probably going to come in at the end of the year with another look at it. But I think going forward, it really needs a hard look. I even think we're looking at upping that number.
Yeah, one of the things I
3
actually
years in a row.
had Kathy do for me is we've pulled the last 5 years of specials, and we're going to pull the last 5 years of reserve transfers, and we're going to look at what accounts we're constantly putting money into, and then we're going to start next year's budget process. And there's no guarantee that there's flexibility in the budget, but we're going to start saying, okay, what are we constantly funding at the special that we just know we've got to fix that problem before we go add something here. And this line's come up more than others. Some of these other ones are just a matter of moving it around. And the DPW salary line is not that flush that there's a lot of extra money in there that we could just say, well, just permanently move 50 grand over and solve the problem. But this is a line that's come up quite a few times. As an example, I think town council, for the last 5 years, we've had to transfer money into special. Well, that's an indication that we're not budgeting appropriately. So we're trying to look at some of those things and fix them first in the budget for these things that continue to come up.
The reality is, however, is that the new way that our budgets are being set is that even though there may be an overage in an account, you're not going to be coming back for a reserve fund transfer necessarily next year because it's all covered under the one salary account.
Correct. Although again, with the DPW is a little bit lower, where some of these other ones we're moving $10,000 into overtime.
Right.
We know we've got it in the budget. The DPW just we've
Right.
cut this one really close.
Right. That doesn't mean that we should, do a hard analysis of what the actual amounts are. The reality is, though, is we probably won't be back for reserve fund transfer.
Correct.
Correct. We should see a reduction in the municipal relief requests, and you'll see
Right.
that most of these,
Municipal relief, excuse me.
with the exception of some of the smaller ones, are just moving money from one side of the budget
Right.
to the other. Whereas we've tried to cut down in the last few years on the ones.
Yeah.
Last year we had one that was more of a, hey, we've got leftover money over here. We'd like to do this, and it's no, that's not what we're doing here. This is just to get your books to balance. And
Okay.
I haven't seen the small transfers, but Tom and I have talked about in the future we may create a line in the budget to just handle any of the, instead of doing municipal relief transfers for anything under $500 where it's a de minimis amount, where
Yeah.
the accounting process of asking for a $122 transfer for a department has just cost us more time
Yeah.
and money than the $122. But that would be for just the ones that are frustratingly under $500.
All right, further discussion. Do we want to, Ann?
I'm sorry, one other thing. The Board of Selectmen letter did not mention the dollar amount that they had approved for the Public Works. It's just a little thing, but if Mr. Maloney,
Well, they
since you're
attached,
here as a representative, they attached something?
They must have attached Mark's request to it, right?
That's correct.
They attached
Well, Mark's
this
request has
request?
7,000,
Okay.
which is bumping it up.
Okay, your request was attached to this letter. It's kind
Yes.
of hard to tell that the way we got it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
fine.
I mean,
I just wanted to
Yeah. I mean-
point out that, you know, they could have approved $6,000 and we wouldn't have known it.
Yeah, no, I mean, most of these, I mean, the only one I think that's been approved officially by the selectmen in any form is Mark. So
Yeah.
I would hope that tomorrow, you know, when the selectmen do meet again, that they would take, you know, formal action just to reinforce what action we've taken. So with that, you know, if it's all right with the board, I'd rather hold off on voting on each individual one and vote them as a whole, if that seems acceptable.
Sure.
Yep.
Good, okay. Any further questions for Mark? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Next one
So,
is
I'm sorry.
Fire Department, 15,000. Chief Maurice,
Good evening,
welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Board.
Hi.
I'm asking for the fire department to move a total of $15,000 out of the substitution account. $10,000 of that is for the building, the electricity. I believe, according to my business manager, the past number of years, the utilities have been level funded at the fire department, but they have been increasing. So we need that money to pay our electricity bill to Mr. Collins back there.
This is, Mr. Chairman, if I could, this is another area we've identified. We do have a little bit of a quirk where by the time town meeting has approved a budget, we're always setting utility rates after that fact.
Yeah.
So there's a couple other budgets where we're either looking for money or we have
Yeah.
to first address next year that we, you know, you look at the budget in February and you say, well, we're pretty good for utility, we think we're good. And then you get to July and we're setting utility rates, but our budgets are already
Okay.
been set. So that's also on a list of next year. One of the first things we gotta look at is there's some utility areas we've just been under budgeting. We had a rate increase
Okay.
last year after we passed the budget at town meeting, and that doesn't necessarily reflect the
Okay.
department budget.
All right, I mean, I understand the difficulty he has dealing with that cold-hearted Mr. Collins, but we will, I think we're okay.
I think some of the money's been channeled into
Yeah.
accounts like water also, so we could get
Yeah.
that paid for,
Okay.
gas, things of that
Good.
nature. So,
The school department got caught in that too, right?
Yeah, the rate
Yeah.
increase is great.
Yeah,
the other amount that I'm asking for to be moved is the $5,000. That's for building equipment repair. That's to pay for any outstanding bills that we had at the end of the fiscal year
Okay.
that were coming in. I'm sure you're aware that we have many issues with the heating,
Right.
AC system in the building. This year and at the end of the fiscal year was no different.
Yeah.
Some hot days, it's blowing warm air, and some of the cool days, it's blowing cool air. So we did have to call contractors in to correct that issue. We also have a few other items. So basically, that $5,000 is just to cover any of those
cover whatever may
costs.
be coming out.
Correct.
Okay, for the end of the year.
They do, but it's a consistent issue with the units where they're at their 15-year lifespan.
Didn't we just replace something?
Just
like
one
that?
of them.
Just one?
So the 4 others are at the end of their lifespan, and they're all going to need to be replaced. So basically, we're putting a Band-Aid on a much larger problem.
Yeah, well, something we have to think about whether, you know, we have a schedule to replace those, because not that I like putting money into new units, but on the other hand, if it costs a significant amount of money to maintain those existing units, you're really throwing good money at the bat.
Tony, is that part of capital outlay?
It is. We have an appropriation this year. I think it was about $150,000 for the design of a new system, and that's the approach that we're taking, is that these rooftop units, it's not just the rooftop units that are failing, the control system has issues, the internal system has issues, the rooftop units have issues. The rooftop units are about 80 grand a pop. So we could go through this process where every other year we're replacing another $80,000 rooftop unit on top of a system that has had problems since it was installed. So we're looking at a design concept for just replacing the entire system to get us the next 20 years, rather than playing this game of, oh, it's only another $100,000, it's only another $100,000.
Yeah.
Not to mention the repair costs on a regular basis
Right.
are just eating up the
And how old are
repair
they now?
load.
15
Oh,
years.
at least 15, yeah.
Time has flown, hasn't it, Ann?
Yep.
At least when you're having fun. All right.
Chair, I
Those
have a
were the
question.
replacements.
Mr. Chairman?
Kelly,
What
sure.
about solar for the new design? That's a very well-lit area down there.
We could look into that. It wouldn't really, it would just, it might help the rooftop and the electric usage, but it wouldn't really impact the new, just the fact that the HVAC system was not a good system to begin with and it's starting to fail.
But it
where-
could power it. That was my point.
It would help the building. I don't know if you could power a whole HVAC system, but we are taking a look at everywhere we can stick in solar. We'd like to. And that
Okay.
roof would probably be a good location.
Okay. All right, further questions for the
I think
chief?
just as I think about it, we discussed that recently. The roof is scheduled for, I think, in 3 or 4 years, an existing conditions report. So we should probably get that done, and then we'd be able to decide if we want to start playing with the roof. Because I think we're looking at the roof has some issues. It's scheduled for replacement in 4 or 5 years, so it might make sense.
Well, that'd be 20 years.
Yeah, that's what we're
Yeah.
looking at.
I think the roof is.
I would do the design at the same time.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just going to say, because I was in there and I saw the results of what the roof looks like now.
Mm-hmm.
And I had suggested at your capital outlay meeting that you move the design of the roof up.
Mhm.
But if you did both
We
the
can probably do
roof
both at the same
and
time.
the units at the same time, that would definitely make sense.
I mean, this is an example of why we need a centralized facility situation, and we're working on it. You shouldn't be spending time on this. There should be some facilities, central facilities is taking care of it. You do your job, and that's it.
So Mr. Collins, if we did put solar on that roof, the electricity would actually go into the grid, right? It wouldn't power the HVAC system directly, would it?
You tied in, it'd be all mixed together, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean, it's the same net effect, it's just mechanically, we're selling it back to the grid anytime we produce solar.
Well, you can do it either way
You can
with
do
the
it both
fire
ways.
department, but it would end up being the same thing with the town and the light department.
Mhm.
You know, it's all the same net amount.
Okay.
Okay. Further questions for the
You
chief?
could use it
I'm just,
before it goes to the grid.
Bob?
I'm impressed that you're moving money out of substitution
I
for
know.
another item.
Well,
I'm kind of shocked with that.
We overshot a little bit, so we're happy about that.
Yeah.
Be able to move
It's
it.
the other way around.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions?
All right. Good. Chief,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right. We next have a request from our town clerk. Mary Lou?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you all.
Good to be here.
Did a wonderful
See ya.
job, you and your staff.
Thank you.
For the override ballot and
Thank
voting.
you. Thank you.
Things went smooth. And
Yeah. It was one of the easy elections because it was so short. I mean, the ballot itself, which is
Yeah.
One
pretty
question.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty nice.
All right.
But the machines held up and all that.
They did. Yep.
Good.
Yep, they did. So just, I need $3,000 in my town clerk's overtime budget and $1,800 in my election and registration overtime. And it's basically due to the overtime that was used for the elections.
Okay.
Yeah, and early voting, you know, we had all of that. So it was basically used for all the elections that we had.
Okay.
And I did have money in my, 2 of my lines in my town clerk's budget, and then 1 in my election still left over.
Okay, so really just
So moving, right.
money from one portion of the town clerk budget to another
Correct.
portion of the
Yes.
town clerk budget?
Yep.
No new money or anything like that?
Nope.
Okay.
And I make a motion to approve.
We're going to do them all
I
together.
thought we're gonna do them all together,
Oh, that's right. So I forgot that.
but,
That's such a
So-
good time.
all right, anything further for Mary Lou?
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice to see you all. Thank you.
All right, Jimmy,
Can I make a comment?
yes.
So what we're doing tonight is we have accounts that have a little, and none of these accounts have a lot of money left in them, and this is just for the public. But we have these accounts, they have a little bit of money in them, we have some needs, we're moving that money. What this is doing is also reducing our free cash. We talk about our free cash and stuff, so this money that we're moving to pay these bills is not available for the public's knowledge, for us to have as free cash later on. Am I correct, Mr. McQuaid?
You are correct.
Thank you.
Okay,
A statement.
good.
People understand.
All right. All right, Jimmy.
In the light department, we came close to, present day is actually a $7,000 balance in the overtime account. However, on the last 2 days of June, Saturday and Sunday, We had 3 feeder outages, which are major outages, which is very unusual. We might have one of those every few months. We had 3 of them on those 2 days. One of them being a manhole explosion down by the hospital actually ripped up the roadway. We were the cause for some of Mark's overtime, so I mean, I should take the blame for that.
I think you should give him some money.
Well, whatever the case, he had people there that were assisting, that did a lot of work.
Yeah.
The police had people there, you know, it was a very, very expensive
Why did it blow?
outage. Well, there was a cable failure, but what happened, which happens, I mean, that happens every now and then, but there must have been natural gas in the manhole because it actually caused an explosion in the cover. There's a frame and cover. There's a frame that the manhole cover stood in, and then there's a cover. And they were locked shut for whatever reason, whether there were pebbles in there or whatever, but that it didn't pop the cover. Usually the cover would just blow off. In this case, the cover didn't blow off, so as a result, the whole road blew up.
Lucky no one got hurt.
Luckily, nobody got hurt. It happened at about 4 in the morning, so, I mean, we were very fortunate that way. But anyway, these 3 things occurred, which were very unusual.
What were the other 2?
One was a lightning strike on Saturday. There was a thunderstorm down on Route 1. There were 2 phases that came down. And on Sunday night,
Was that a transformer?
no, there were two wires actually got knocked down from the lightning down on Route 1 near Park Toyota.
Okay.
And the other one was on Sunday night up near the top of Washington Street. A flock of birds, believe it or not, knocked out a feed. That feeder, the South Norwood feeder. So that's
That's one that lets me know.
so that we.
South Norwood?
Yeah, you get knocked out that night, Sunday night. Those are the 3 things. It's very unusual. The overtime for the weekend was over $17,700. They have about 7,000 in there now. So I probably need. I'm asking for 15,000 because in my labor budget,
Yeah.
you know, I have people that have left. Mr. Mizuko said there's plenty of money there, so I'm asking just for 15 to make sure that the thing balances.
And whatever you don't use
And
just
whatever we
goes
don't
back
use,
to
it's gonna
free
come back
cash.
anyway, so.
Okay.
I have to tell you, I mean, you always impress me in getting it back so fast. I was out 45 minutes.
It's the people, that, you know, I'm very, very fortunate. All of the employees have the same mindset, and they want to get
And in
the.
my complex, they just expect it to come back. They know it'll happen, and
Yeah.
they're very grateful.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that people don't understand about having our own electric light company, is that, you know, something happens in Norwood, it's the people in Norwood who fix it right away, whereas if it happens in 4 or 5 towns, it's where they get to,
Yeah.
and they may get to you 2 days later.
you know, we're very fortunate with the people we have now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're very well trained, you know, they
Yeah.
get right on it, they do the repairs as quickly as they can.
Yeah.
Not to mention the cost is lower.
Mhm.
It's
It is.
Considerably lower.
Yeah. Tom?
Since Mr. Collins is here, perhaps he could just give us a quick update on the construction of the new light
Oh, yes.
headquarters.
Yeah, the building's going along fine. We're more than 50% through. I don't know if you've been by there at all, but
I have.
at one point they took all the skin off it. If you look, the new skin, which actually has insulation built into it, is installed. The old skin, the way they used to do it, they used to have bad insulation on the inside. And
Yeah.
actually had quite a bit of mold in there. Water get in there. So the new stuff, that can't happen. So the skin's all done. The building is basically framed. The inside, the steel studs are up to segregate the room. So they're getting to the point where they'll be before too long. You know, they're putting pipes in for the water. They got ducts in for the heat and the exhaust, and they're getting to the point where they're going to be putting up sheetrock and moving
What's
along.
the estimated completion date?
Substantial completion was scheduled for December 15th, and I think it's still on track for that.
Okay.
Good.
I suspect the office itself will move a little behind that because of the fact that we have to set up all the systems, but I'm hoping to have at least the trucks and the stock in there on that
Good.
date or close to that date.
Excellent. Okay.
Good to have them undercover for the winter.
It will be great to have the trucks undercover,
Yeah.
and I think it will save us a lot of money, a lot of wear and tear for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly as in the DPW, and I think the same thing will be with your vehicles, your equipment. I mean, multi-million dollars worth of equipment.
Yeah, it will be
Mr.
very helpful.
Chairman?
Yeah.
So, related to the light department, as you know, today is our go-live day for the general ledger and paying bills, et cetera, and that's going well. And we're scheduled for October 14th for utility billing, so
Yeah, they're shooting for that. That will be a milestone. We'll be changing over water and electric billing.
so although Mr. Collins has done a lot of work on the installation, Dan Morrissey, one of his right-hand people, has really been the day-to-day person in charge and has done a fantastic job.
That will
Good.
relieve some staff too.
You know, it's hard to say at this point. We'll have to see. I hope so, but I don't know that for a fact. On
But a
the
lot of the nitty-gritty stuff that you do, because you have to look up this manually and all that.
well,
you
we
can
looked them
do
up
that.
now. I mean, the problem is we're still going to be creating the bills and mailing them ourselves. I mean, one of the things you could do is go to an outside vendor that a lot of people do. The reason we haven't done that is that's more expensive than the way we do it. We've done cost analysis on it before. It's
Does that
really-
include staff though?
It
Or
does.
just the billing pieces of it? Are you including the reduction in staff costs in that analysis? Because I would find it really hard to believe that those services would be more expensive if you're calculating in reductions in
Well,
staff.
those services still have to pay for their employees and their employees' costs.
For sure, but the whole reason companies outsource it or municipalities outsource it is because it's cheaper than maintaining staff. You don't have to pay a pension, don't have to pay benefits,
I mean,
all
we
of that
can
stuff goes
maintain
away.
full-time staff
we can
just
look
to
at that
get the
again. I mean,
billing
we'll,
out. So, sorry to interrupt, but we don't maintain full-time staff to get the billing out, so I don't know if there's any bodies we could say we
Okay.
no longer need. We'd still have a billing
That's fair.
administrator running the system. Where you might be able to see savings is maybe in the customer service department, but even then, we don't maintain 10 billers that just do the billing. Some of our processes will be quicker.
That's fair. That's
I
fair.
hate to break it down to be it's a giant machine, but it's sort of a giant machine that we get it set up and push the button and it goes. It's a lot more complicated than that, but so that there's no body there that we can say, oh, thank God, we don't need these 4 billing clerks anymore. We're just stuffing envelopes.
Is there any talk of, like, we're talking about consolidating facilities, about consolidating all town billing into one department, regardless of what it comes
Well,
from?
it is. The light department already does the billing for water and sewer and for light. Everything else that we issue a bill for is minor.
Taxes?
and broadband, and we do broadband too.
The taxes would go on a separate bill, so it really wouldn't have an improvement on the process unless you wanted a bill that had your property taxes and your water and your sewer. That might get a little complicated.
But all of that is, the October 14th is the transition time for the utility billing, but July 1st of 20 for the real estate tax. Real estate and excise tax.
All right.
Mr. Chair?
Bob?
Just, is there opportunity, as construction gets closer to the end date, that we could see it?
Anytime.
So, give you a call?
If anyone's interested, just give me a call. I'll get you
Okay.
down there. Get your hard hat and get you down there.
I'm assuming it's probably not ready for any kind of touring for this.
Right now, there's not a lot to see. I mean, you go in and just a lot of, they're gonna start the site work. I think this week they're gonna start digging up the front, the parking lot. You know, have to do a little regrading. So I think once that's all over, we'll look a lot different,
Okay.
a lot better.
All right. Good. I'll
Can I
leave
ask
it.
one last question?
Sure.
When we move to the new accounting system, will I get one bill for my electric, utility, water, and sewer all together in one bill now?
Right now, you will not know, because it's not always the same person at that address. There are
Fair, like renters and stuff like that might have two different.
Yeah, if
people
you're a
pay.
homeowner, you might get the water bill, but you could be renting, a
Fair,
different electric
fair.
bill.
There's
Okay.
the complexity.
And
Yep, that's fair. That's totally
Okay.
fair.
All right. Any further questions for Jimmy? Okay. Jimmy, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Tom, there's an additional request, I see.
There is from the building inspector. He wasn't able to come tonight, but we're hoping that Mr. Mizuko can shed some light.
Okay.
Sure. We initially anticipated doing this at the special this spring. We thought we were good, and we found out we weren't good. As you know, we did have unfortunately, somebody passed away in that office, so there was a payout of some vacation time and some sick time. And the gap in between that individual going and somebody else going in wasn't enough to cover the total amount owed out. It's a challenge with the smaller departments, with just 5 full-time staff down there, that those budgets just don't ever have that extra room to absorb that $15,000 payout.
Yeah. Okay.
So in this case, we thought this would be at the special, it turned out not to be at the special. We need, I think it's $7,700 to close out the inspectors.
Yeah,
budget.
7,735.
I would, again, go with $8,000 just to be even. I'd hate to come back for a 28-cent transfer.
So you're looking for 8,000 for that? And again, whatever isn't spent goes directly back to free cash.
Correct.
For discussion?
Do we know, do we know what's going from what to, oh, I see it's here.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for where we're taking it from and putting it into.
Okay.
There is no from and to.
Yeah, there's-
Actually, it doesn't say in the letter, but this is gonna come from library salary.
Okay.
So it's just
okay.
again a money transfer.
Right.
Yeah.
Library salaries?
Yes, they have access.
And they've been told that?
They told us.
Okay,
Okay.
wonderful.
Major
I like
mistake.
that.
Yeah.
And are we going for this 8,000?
8,000.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you could have a motion for all of those transfers, that would be helpful.
Mhm.
So, the DPW, are we going for 7,000 or 8,000?
8.
8. And this one we're going for 8. 8,000.
All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the municipal relief transfers as documented in the materials before us.
Second.
Second, okay.
Can we
Just-
run over the numbers?
I was just going to do that. That's 8,000 for the DPW, 15,000 for the fire department, $4,800 for the town clerk, 15,000 from the light department, $8,000 for the building department. Okay. You know, in reality, you know, these are fewer number of municipal relief requests than we've had in past years, which I think we all agree is the proper approach.
And
All
next-
right.
And next year will be even less.
We hope there will be less.
I think
All right.
Judy seconded it, right? Did you
Yes,
Yeah.
I second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Good. Tony, I assume tomorrow when the selectmen meet that they'll also vote to endorse these, or at least you put it out to them?
They will. It's more of an internal practice with municipal relief than
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
Similar to a reserve fund transfer, their formal approval is not.
Right. We know,
process.
yeah, but, you know, tradition has been that, you know, they, you know, at least offer their opinion on this, so.
Correct. I think the only reason we're doing it sort of a little out of order was there was just some scheduling.
Just the way the
challenges.
meetings are scheduled, yeah.
Meetings next week.
Okay. All right, next item. Next items is a letter to Blue Hills Regional School regarding stipends. Bob, would you like to discuss this?
Sure. This is in reference to a meeting of the Blue Hills District School Committee in May. Tony attended it as well. Essentially, at that meeting, it was quite a crowded meeting. There was a lot of people there. And it was apparent as we arrived to the meeting that folks were there to see what was going to happen with this proposed stipend, financial stipend for the district members. And I know Tony and other folks from other towns spoke at that meeting, and after a lot of rigorous discussion and back and forth with the chair.
And Bob, you know, the issue with the stipends is usually it's not necessarily the amount of the stipend per se, but it makes you eligible for
Health
benefits,
insurance.
particularly
Right.
the health benefits,
Right.
which are quite costly.
Right. So at the end of the day, it was voted down 5-0. However, I am aware that last year a similar proposal had been made, and I know that it's possible that this particular item could come up for a discussion next year, although I'm pretty sure it won't. I noticed the new chair of the district committee was one of the 5 voted against it, as did Mr. Connolly from Norwood. However, at the meeting, it was indicated that they had received a letter, at least from one other community, Dedham, to the Finance Commission, to express their opposition to the idea. Even though it has been tabled or voted down by the committee, I thought it was wise for us to go on record as opposed to the concept entirely. So basically, that's what the letter is doing.
Okay.
It's just a suggestion if anyone has any comments, certainly.
Okay. Again, thank you, Bob, for taking the lead on this.
Thank you, Bob.
Well written.
Any
Thank you.
questions, comments on the letter that Bob has drafted?
I think the letter is great.
Okay.
One question, do any towns provide health insurance benefits for publicly elected officials?
Yes.
They do.
So-
There are
Yeah.
some.
Maybe a quarter in the Commonwealth or so, maybe less than that nowadays. Some towns do. Norwood, I think, never has. A lot of towns have moved away from it, but there's still quite a few that do.
Cities or towns? And
Yeah.
are they compensated financially as well?
Yeah, towns as small as Fairhaven. Cheshire, Massachusetts, population 3,000, gives health insurance to their elected selectmen.
What bothered me about this proposal was that, and I think, Tony, you had a piece of information that was available at that meeting, was that by and large, those, let's say it's Cambridge, the city councilors can get a stipend. It needs to be voted on. Is a process that Massachusetts law covers. It was really unclear to me as to the authority that a district committee, school committee could have to implement a stipend without the support and approval of each of the 9-member towns, and that appeared to be the path that they were taking. And
they're required to go through the legislative bodies of the towns in the district, and they were sort of going about it in a backwards way by saying, well, let's vote to do this, and then what I think they were going to do was just try to put it in their budget and assume, well, pass the budget at all 9 towns, which is not what you're supposed to do. It's a required affirmative vote. To your point, it somewhat dates back to before health insurance was an issue. So if you remember that health insurance has been mandatory for public employees in Massachusetts for probably 60 years now. So 40 years ago when it was, hey, I'm on a selectman, I'm not here in Norwood, but can I get health insurance for the town? Sure, why not? It's $150 a year. Who cares about it? And if health insurance was still $150 a year, we'd have a family and friends plan. But it's long since been that case. I have not heard of somebody adding health insurance in years. The trend has been to go away from it. School committees do receive compensation stipend in some cities and towns in Massachusetts. That's exceedingly rare. I'd say it's definitely less than 10%, if not less than 5%. So the idea of a stipend and the health insurance, the towns that have done it have gone away from the health insurance stipend. But there's still, I think I have a document somewhere that lists quite a few that still do it. You'd be
Tony,
surprised.
do some of them just give a stipend and
Some do just give a stipend, and that's the other thing where this was a little bit concerning. They weren't talking about just the stipend, they were full well
Right,
talking about
both.
the health insurance
Yes.
as well.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, by doing that, once you've offered it for 10 years, you're locked into the plan when you retire. And as we all know, a family health plan can cost anywhere from $16,000 to $20,000 a year. So you're talking about an enormous burden that could exist in perpetuity. Again, if it was $100 a year, you'd say, whatever, here you go. But it's just, it's absurd that they would bring it up. There were a couple of members on the committee that continued to want to bring it up. And there's many good paying jobs in the public sector, and if you want a full-time job with benefits, by all means take one, but you shouldn't be jumping on a school committee. Incidentally, that is on top of a $50 or $60 million renovation
Right.
of their building that we will be paying for the next generation.
Ann?
I have a suggestion though, Bob. I think that we should, who did you intend to send it out to? I guess is my first question.
Tom Polito, the chairman of
Chairman.
the district
Okay.
committee.
And my thought was maybe to send it to the FinComs or the like boards to with the other towns that are in the group with us.
copy to the
Copy
other
to them.
Yeah, we could
Copy to the other towns.
we could certainly do that.
What I could do is I reached out to the my counterparts in all of these towns, which rallied some of the support at the meeting. I can make sure that they know, because they're aware now that Dedham has done something. Some of them sent people there. We can send this to them and say, this is what our finance commission is doing. We recommend you
Yeah.
do the same and let the committee hear for it. And then to Bob's point, we're just going to make sure we keep paying attention to it, which
Okay.
you'd think that they could just go and do their thing and we wouldn't have to worry about it. They're just going to throw it on their agenda
Yeah.
to pay themselves health insurance, but
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
they don't pay attention to it.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll carbon copy. Is it going to be the FinCom, or is it going to be the Tony's counterparts in those other
Easy to send it
communities?
to the managers and say that
Okay.
let your FinComs know, because
Got
they
it.
may have different internal processes and everything.
Okay.
And as you know, sometimes the FinComs meet very infrequently, and you send mail to them, and if they're getting it, perhaps without contact.
Right, okay. All right,
As long as everybody knows what we're doing.
all right. Further discussion? Hearing none. On favor of the letter?
That was a motion by Mr. Donnelly, seconded by,
Me.
thank you.
All right, Tom, if you can just prepare this on town letterhead, and I will sign this, and we'll be off and running. Good. Okay. Very good. Moving along. Good. Next items relate to the override, and particularly the override pledge, and the concern about people have asked, of monitoring what was approved in the recent override, is to make sure that people live within their means and that we understand what's happening, and that the numbers that were in the override actually are the numbers that are used and that are spent. So again, I credit Bob for taking the lead on this, and this is to develop, Bob, a procedure for monitoring, both the general government and the town side and the school side.
Yes. Tom, do you have a copy?
Yeah, there's another.
Oh, great. Sure. So, now that the override election is done, obviously it's time to pay attention to the management of the override over the coming fiscal years. And one of the important items that certainly was highlighted during the campaign, and it is very important to our internal processes, is the pledge that all three boards, school, finance commission, and selectmen made regarding the things that we will commit to over the coming years to ensure that the override funds our operations for the 5-year period, FY 20 to 24. So what you have before you are just some thoughts that I put down on paper for discussion in regards to the things that we already do, and in addition, things that we could do in order to ensure that we are measuring ourselves and ensuring that we are in compliance with the various pledge details. So on the left side of it's a table. On the left side column is the verbiage from the pledge that was agreed to by all of our boards. And the right side are the things that I'm putting out for discussion in regards to things that we could do, and I'm speaking for the Finance Commission, things that the Finance Commission could do in order to ensure that we are taking a look at the finances or the pledge detail every year to ensure that our actions are consistent with what we pledge to the citizens that we would do. And as you'll note, I have a lot of references here in terms of budget balancing committee and FY budget pass process. So a lot of this obviously is things that we do today. But just to highlight, I can go through this very quickly. Just to highlight, the first one is the override stabilization account to meet the time frame. I think as a commission, I would be interested in just a little more information in terms of just how that is funded. That's a very technical thing. As money comes in, where is the money set aside to fund that $700,000 override stabilization?
Actually, let me just take a moment to explain. So, when we make the fiscal 21 budget, the first item we're going to budget is $700,000 into the stabilization fund. So that's how it's going to get funded, because that's a commitment that's key. And so we have to fund that before we can do 3.5% potentially increases and other things. Secondarily, you may recall that because we weren't sure if the override would pass, the FinCom recommended that we basically provide an additional $509,000 to the school budget, which they have, and then when the override passed, they put it in kind of a holding account.
All right.
And their intention is to let that either somehow flow to free cash or whatever. But I think many people think that a good use of that would be to, at the fall town meeting, is to reduce the school budget by that amount and actually add it to the stabilization fund, so we'd have $1.2 million to start. And, you know, that would be my professional recommendation on that.
I believe that's where the thinking of the school committee was.
Yeah,
But
that's-
it's not, just because I want it done that way doesn't mean people will.
No, but I think we've talked about that, and I think that, you know, makes some sense. You know, it'll let the override last for a longer period of time, if nothing else, and I think that's an important thing. And, you know, in addition to just finding out, you know, where it's going, I think, you know, at the beginning of every budget year, you know, when people have drafted out their initial budgets, we should have a indication of how much money is remaining in that account, because we'll see, you know, a 700,000 new budget item go into the budget every year, but that doesn't necessarily show us how much money is in the account, you know, presently is in the account, and how much is proposed to be used or saved during that fiscal year. Okay.
So can I ask, is the school department, does anybody know if the school department is on board with that 500,000 that was put
Yes.
there as an advance?
Yes.
I heard it,
Yes.
Yeah.
but we've got to make sure.
I don't know whether there was an actual vote on it, but that was the general
Right.
That was-
But that was the
consensus.
vote, that was the vote for the school committee in the meeting before the
Okay,
override.
so that's
They
the
voted that.
expectation,
Okay.
that'll
That-
fall
that'll
through,
go.
we'll have
Yeah. Good.
1.2
Okay.
in the,
Well, we have to do that at the fall town meeting.
yes, at the fall town
Good.
meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask one?
Go ahead, sure.
Two general questions, actually.
Sure.
So I think this is awesome, and Bob, thank you so much for putting this together. This is great. I have two comments. One thing is, I think that we need to be more proactive in monitoring what's going on financially within the town rather than reactive, meaning that monthly we should be proactively monitoring accounts to see where they are and do some trend analysis. My background is actually in financial management. I handle budget management for my organization. I would love to be able to get training on Tyler Munis and maybe build us some custom reports where we can track this stuff moving forward. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I'd be happy to take that on if it means that we could get some. I don't want to take up a staff member building reports for us and taking away from their regular job. If it's something that I can do on my own, I have a lot of different experience with financial systems. I'd be happy to take the training to learn how to do it.
So we can, once we know how to pull a report out of
Okay.
for the system.
Fair.
Maybe a year or two away before we
That's fine.
get working. We can do that. I've done that in other towns before. We provide sort of a monthly or a quarterly update. The only challenge we would face is that our revenues that are really subject to more fluctuation, the local receipts, are a small part of the overall picture. So we can monitor building permits monthly, but at the end of the day, building permits aren't, you know, the make all or break all. Expenditures, we have a process where we go over the budget, so we can monitor them monthly, but again, our costs being built into our labor pool, which is 70 or 80% of the budget, that's sort of always going to be there. So then all we're really working at is the margins, which can't really go up or down that much anyway. It's not to say that sort of a monthly update or a quarterly update, looking at some of the key accounts is not a bad idea, that's actually a good idea, but there's only so much you're going to be able to gather from doing that trend analysis of, well, where are we month to month? Because at the end of the day, the tax levy is $82 million. It's got to be $82 million unless you have a collection issue, which is a separate.
Yeah, I mean, I know that on a monthly basis, you know, we do get the, I'm sure I can't remember what you call them, Tom.
It's called the budget summary by functions.
The summary report by functions, which shows, you know, what was allocated for a particular, budget item versus what's actually been spent. Sometimes it's, you know, it's not linear. I mean, substitution is a perfect example. You know, you may have quite a bit, you know, during the summer, a little bit less during the winter, then more towards the spring and later on in the fiscal year. But I think, you know, when we do get those monthly reports, it wouldn't be a bad idea if, again, things aren't linear, but if people early on see that, you know, this could be a problem, you know, that's brought to our attention, so we can try to come up with a plan B so it doesn't become a bigger problem later on in the year.
We can certainly do it. And you're right, we don't have that sort of, everything's not a 1/12.
Yeah.
It's certain things are very seasonal, and
Yeah.
other items, I mean, you take insurance, we probably spend 90% of the insurance budget in July because we get a discount by paying it in July.
Right.
So that's one of those things you look after 30 days in July and say, oh my
Yeah.
God, you spent $90 a year property insurance budget, 90%. Well, sure, we cut one big check for it because we save money by cutting all a check up front,
Yeah.
as an example.
But
Yeah.
what I would like to do is take that a step further and look year over year, and you start looking at trends both in seasonality and also year over year in terms of cost increases in the market. And you can get a pretty good idea of what you need to budget and how you need to budget moving forward, rather than just using an arbitrary rate as the rate of inflation is 2%. So we're going to increase everything 2%. We all know the reason we did the override, not everything increases 2%. And I think there'd be a lot of value in having those reports and be able to do that trend analysis so that you can more accurately budget. I mean, if this wasn't needed, then we would never have to do a transfer of account. Like if every account was perfect and we were right on the money every time, we would never have 10s, 15s, 20 of these transfers. So I think it's something that we should do more proactively, and I think it will help us with the budgeting process overall.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was part of the rationale or, you know, for getting the system in the first place, those tools would be available to be able to do this kind of thing. And I would be expecting those reports to come routinely.
Ann?
Along the lines that of this whole discussion about the reports and getting the reports, and my feelings throughout this whole process, the override process and everything, is that we always had the responsibility to keep the public aware of what was being spent and to defend the public and make sure that there was no overspending and that sort of thing. And we've always taken that very seriously here. And I think that we owe it to the general public at this point to make sure that we are very public with the information that we receive. And that our meetings maybe be changed a little in that when we get more reports from the light department and from Mr. Mizuko and Mr. McQuaid, whether we help develop these reports or the reports that we want, but I think that we owe it to them to have these discussions in all of our meetings and to bring people in and make sure that we are on track for everything. And we can say, all you have to say is, okay, well, this is going to hit in June, so this is okay until June, but this is the way this department is trending, and, you know, so this needs to be out in the open, this needs to be discussed in front of the cameras for the public.
Agreed.
Okay.
So,
Good.
Back to you. You're great.
So,
All right.
but these reporting functions seem like they're going to be developed because we have a new system. So in the interim period, I know Tom does send us monthly reports, and
Can you give me the raw data without the can I get like an Excel spreadsheet with it in it instead of sending me a paper copy, which is basically useless? Because if I can get the monthly actual data in a spreadsheet, I can do analysis and trends with it on my own. I can build my own. I can build my own database. I can pull stuff out. I can do all sorts of things with it.
but in the interim, it's the paper copies. They are what we have, and I do look at them. I could probably benefit from having an agenda item for our fall meeting where, you know, we have the latest reports and we just walk through them, just to get an understanding of what it's being reported on, and then from that maybe we can have a discussion as to whether or not there is further information or reporting that's
Right. I mean, when we get them every month, I know I always go through them, and you know, I'll sort of note areas that look a little bit interesting. But again, it's difficult to tell, you know, because everything isn't 1/12. Everything isn't linear.
Right.
Well, also, the cost of transferring all the individual data over the last 5 years was prohibitive. It would have cost us another $1 million.
Yeah.
So all we really did was we took the balance of an expenditure in an account at the end of fiscal 17, at the end of 18, at the end of 19. So you'll be able to see on an annual basis, but you're not really going to be able without someone manually going back and, so I think over, 5 years from now, you're going to have really good trend lines, but
it's going to take time before
they're going to take, they're really going to have to build up.
Yeah.
One of the challenges I've complained about this for a while that I didn't like with the previous, it's not really the system, it's how we chose to do it, but with capital projects getting dumped in different operating lines,
Right.
I always said we can't do a good trend analysis. We can't say how much of the DP, not that we can't say, but you look at numbers and certain operating lines are going up and down like this, and you're like, well, what the heck's going on? Well, how did the cemetery budget go up $300,000 this year? Well, it didn't. We had a capital project in there, so part of converting the software over what our system is, you can dump those capital projects in that number 3 category. It's actually the number 6 category. And you don't really do a trend analysis of that because you know that those numbers are never going to have any validity because, okay, you bought $1 million fire truck this year, so, I don't know why it flies in the room all of a sudden, but you bought $1 million truck this year, so the DPW capital or whatever goes way up and then it goes way down, but it gives us those operating budget stability, which is something I wanted for a while, to be able to look at it. So we can get there. There's different, one of the things that might be more helpful for us to look at, not that that's not a good idea, and we can get you the spreadsheets, but we can look at fiscal trend monitoring, which is really what sort of the leading FinComs in the state are doing. Because again, if you look at our budgets, remember, we're about a $70 million payroll operation. Our costs and our cost growth are all on the non-operating side. It's all on the labor side. And we know what that cost is. It's the 65 cops and the 70 firefighters. And it's the 800 employees we have. That's where all the cost is. What will be good is looking at the different fiscal trends, which is what we should be looking at, revenues as a whole. There's about 25 different fiscal trends you can look at, and every community has to pick and choose the ones that matter to them. New growth, as an example, that's a fiscal trend we want to be looking at and talking about. That's a key fiscal health indicator for the town and a key economic indicator. I can bring you examples of what other towns look at when they look at their key fiscal indicators. Not that we don't want to look into the details of the budget, but as an example, the accountant's office, other than the audit, there's some training money in there and some office expense money in there. We're not going to get a lot of validity out of it, but looking at these trends, those are when you're going to start to see the warning signs that you're going to say, uh-oh, we're coming up to a problem. We can dig into the real details of the operating budgets, but other than the DPW itself, most of our departments have those small operating budgets. So if you'd like to see that, there's actually a colleague of mine who does presentations on fiscal trend monitoring. He owes me a favor. I can always see if I can get him out here. And they sometimes do it at the MMA, but that's the data you really want to look at, is where are our fiscal trends going. That's sort of the, I'd love to do like a fiscal trend, like a dashboard or a monitor just on fiscal trends, separate from looking at budget items, because at the end of the day, those trends are what you're looking at, that's what you got to fix, and yeah, you may have more here or less here, but that's where you start to see those warning signs as well.
Sounds like a plan.
So perhaps we can in for the fall meeting, also just have a broad category or item just to continue the discussion regarding fiscal trend monitoring and things such as that.
Yeah, I think that's a good direction to go. And just to Bob's point, some of this monitoring is going to be fairly simple. I mean, the money into the stabilization account, it got appropriated at town meeting, goes into the stabilization account. So that one's sort of a fairly easy process. The discussion will be coming in the years where, how much do we put in? Do we put more in? Do we take less in?
Right.
Okay, we've got more money. How much? That's where FinCom really has to.
Yeah, but again, it's also important to, to just keep the, at least for our perspective, also the running total of what's in there.
Oh, sure.
So we know that. And I think, one of the important things, probably one of the most important things we'll be looking at, will be the FTEs. And, certainly not this early because, the school year hasn't even started yet, but once the school year begins, probably around October or so, when everybody knows how many teachers you have and, how many aides, et cetera, that, we would like to see what we always refer to as the crosswalk from the school department, showing us, what their FTEs are, compared to what was estimated, their actual FTEs versus their estimated FTEs, so we can make a determination of how many people they actually added. So you have that number, that baseline number, that then you can compare the subsequent to the future years.
To that point, and that's usually the way we would do it, or most any other organization. The pledge has that language in there on benefited positions.
Yeah.
So, because an FTE could be, I'm assuming that the FTE count that we have in our annual budget probably includes a lot of really very, very part-time people who combine their hours, they equal an FTE.
In the school side, there are a few,
that shows the total sort of FTEs, that's full-time benefited positions, and that includes 20 hours a week or more, and that's important because that's where our cost is. It's in that health insurance plan, it's in that pension. So if you totaled up all the part-time salaries in town, I don't want to say that number's irrelevant, but it's really irrelevant. If they're not getting a pension and benefit package, it's not adding to the legacy cost, it's relatively minor. So I always FTB, full-time benefited. You could also say full-time budgeted, because that's who we know we're paying a benefits package from. And there's no department that's going to have 50, 17-hour-a-week employees where it's some enormous number. I mean, the rec department hires 100 employees in the summer, but they're seasonal help. It's really those benefit packages. The growth in the benefit packages is what has the a liability for us in the long term.
Okay, so what we have in our budget document for town meeting, that FTE number is our benefited positions
Correct.
only. Doesn't include non-benefited positions.
Schools have both. And I think we have some, like the library has some, it might have some, I think it might be identified though in the back of the budget.
Right.
But that chart's usually for the benefit packages that we're
Yeah.
paying out. Because if you're under 20 hours in Massachusetts, if you're 20 hours or more, you have to get
Right.
health insurance and a pension.
Right.
If it's under 20, it's not. And that cost ends up being relatively minor.
Yeah, so what I'm looking for, and that's the third item, and is when I indicate a baseline number to monitor. So I think we need to give some thought as to, the number of FTEs that we have both in school and in town government, categorize them in terms of out of those numbers, and this is particularly for the schools, which ones are affiliated with or specifically dedicated to mandatory and special education, English language learners, grant-funded positions, or other mandated or statutorily required positions. I'd like us to get to a number that says this is what our FY20 number is for all those positions. These are the ones that are associated with the mandated items, so that we can now have an opportunity to monitor as we see increases in if there's an increase headcount coming into the system somewhere, we are able to account for it so we can measure, is it fitting in with the pledge document says no more than 5 benefited positions be added in year 1 in the school and 2 in the general government. I'm just looking for us to find the mechanisms where we know when a new position is coming in, how many are we getting at any one time? So just monitor.
Yeah, I think part of that will be, to Alan's point, in the fall, you have Dr. Thompson and his business manager in and just saying, okay, where did we end up? Because they tend to see that change in staffing and benefit positions more so than we would on the town side. What we kind of get at town meeting is sort of what it is. So it'll be, okay, you came to town meeting, you came to the FinCom, and your plan called for 472 FTEs. I'm making that number up, I don't know what it is. Or benefit packages, and then in October, okay, where did you end up? Well, we're actually at 474. Here's the 2 specific positions we had to add because of this, and then you go from there.
Yeah. Right. Okay, Ann?
Okay. I have been talking to several people in the school committee, and we're trying to get together, and these are the things that I wanted to discuss with them. I wanted to tell them that we'd like a report, and now you have to remember that right at the moment they are presently hiring, and this is what has been making me nervous. So I'm like, whoa. So I did write, Dr. Thompson and I kept missing each other, and I finally wrote him an email saying that we really need to meet because of these things. So we'll meet as soon as we can. We'll get our schedules figured out, and along with Mrs. Stewart, and we'll sit down and we'll get a plan, and with the new business manager, though she'll be coming in August rather, get a plan so that we have a standard format that they can report back to us on their hiring, who they're hiring, how much money they're spending out of the money that was given to them as a result of the override. I know that they had, at the last meeting I attended, they had already started approving money for the curriculum and that sort of thing. I don't want it willy-nilly. I want it delivered to us in a very concise, like you have here.
Because we'd also like to know, you asked for X in the override, for bringing, positions back as well as $1.5 million with the new money. We want to know, are you spending it there, and if not, your reason for that.
And this is what we will work on, and I will make sure
that's what I was trying to reference there. So that's good to hear. I figured that'd be the approach.
Good.
Can I ask 2 questions?
Sure.
One thing, I think it will be, I think that they should just provide us with a monthly report in a standard format that tells us how many positions they have. That's more of a comment than a question. Actually, it's 2 comments in 1 question. Second comment is, I think what we should do is we should have like a dashboard of what the override paid for, and then track spending and expenditures to that, for at least for the first year, because we're obligated to spend it on that.
And we can do that fairly easily. This
Yeah.
isn't terribly complicated. Look, the general government half of it is easy. We allocate
you have
250
2
grand.
items.
For roads.
Here's what we did with it.
Yeah.
Here's what we did with snow and ice. It's in the budget. So for me,
This is gonna be my road.
But you're right. Just a dashboard of here's what you said it went to, and are these things still here, and what's changed if not? Well, we said we needed this part-time librarian position. Well, you change it. Well, how come? Well, we made this change. And that should be fairly simple because it's really that $1.5 million. And we know some of that was, I think, snow and ice, and then some of that was the curriculum. So we can do this fairly simply. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated, whether it's a monthly report or a quarterly or just something we submit with the budget that goes to town meeting to say, update us on how this has gone. These 3 points are easy. The stabilization fund, here's what went in or went out of it. And then here's the adds to the school budget. The other money was really closing a deficit. And then the FTE number will have to work.
Yeah, and you know, my sense is you may not have to necessarily do that monthly, because the key item in this is really the personnel, the FTEs. And beginning in October, you pretty much know what your FTEs are. There are always things that could change. Somebody may move into town, as an example, and require particular kind of services. If that's the case, they can bring that to our attention, but maybe more of a quarterly rather than monthly. But we can deal with those details later. I don't
The
think that's
bottom line
critical.
is that we need
Right.
we need a report. We need it. We need to know what their plan is, and then we need to know that they've implemented that plan.
And then
Right.
reconcile it with.
Right, and
it
this isn't just a one-off kind of thing. It's something that continually, is going to be done during the 5-year period of
You
this
can do a quarterly
override.
staff report from the schools and just
Yeah.
say what changed, because remember,
Right.
it's the only
That's all you
department
do,
that
yeah.
has that change where, again, they could have a high special needs student come in, they have to hire a paraprofessional for them,
Yeah.
and then that student leaves 2 months later, and
Yeah.
then they sort of don't need that person anymore. So
Yeah.
we don't have that on the general government side, so it
Yeah.
could just be quarterly, what changes did you have?
Okay.
These 2 students come in and we brought these 2 positions in. They're not in the middle of the year gonna say, well, we just decided we wanted, another assistant superintendent, so we threw one on, and then 3 months later, well, we didn't want it, we took it back. So quarterly, it'd be, I think, quick and easy for them. What changed? Why did it change? And that actually will
Okay.
help you with the narrative going into the budget process, where instead of saying, well, we went from 472 to 482, oh my God, what happened? Well, over the course of the year, these things happen.
Right.
Again, they're not gonna be, well, we just added a secretary middle year, and we wanted a gym teacher, and, Bob likes math, so we threw in a math teacher. They don't do that.
Yeah.
It's mainly those ESL
Okay.
positions and those special ed positions.
All right.
that-
My last thing.
Sure.
One thing I think that's been something that's financially affected the town in a negative way is grant positions and people not budgeting for them once the grant expires. It happened with the kindergarten grant, it's happened with several other positions. So what I would like to see on that report is a listing by position, what's covered by grant, how much that grant is, and when that grant expires, because I want to make sure moving forward that those granted positions are included in the budget, or we discontinue the service. We can't
I
have
agree.
both.
That actually would be a great sort of standalone report to just say that this is townwide, this is everything that's grant funded, here's the source, what the percentage is, when's the funding through, because I know Impact Norwood has funding for, it's either 4 or 5 years, and then there's a gap year, and then we can get the grant again for another 5 years. So, but we're gonna wanna know that's coming. That might be something where I would never wanna use free cash in the operating budget, but you say, well, we'll fund it for that 1 year, because we know we're getting it for 5 subsequent years, and we should probably have, absent some of the regular grant funded ones, you should always have a discussion about, hey, we're taking the grant funded position on board, because then you're sort of accepting the liability of having to pay for it. Even though you may not have to, once you start having a person come in and do work, and then you say, well, the grant ran away, so got rid of this position, it becomes a nightmare. So that would be a great standalone report. That's all stuff we can add to the budget as well, as part of the document.
All right,
Ann?
so just one quick thing. So Ann, you and when you meet with the school committee personnel will develop some kind of format for FTEs, and somebody will take the lead again on some kind of reporting plan, format or whatever for other things, for all the other items. Tony? Okay, good. Ann.
One other thing, actually, when you started talking about grants, one of the things that I hoped to be on the budget balancing committee again this year, and one of the things that I would like to see is that we should look at, as you said, Tony, all of the grants. Mayev and I had already discussed this, whether or not I got on the budget balancing again, she's thinking along the same lines, that we should
Okay.
look at our income, our receipts, our grants, find out which grants are are going to cause us problems, and so that we can
Yeah.
look for it and budget for it the 5 years out.
Okay. All right, good. Anything further on this? Again, Bob?
No, just to cover off, this is a very good discussion, really appreciate it. So just to cover off on the other items, the major ones we hit, I just also suggest, this is relatively minor because I know Mark has it all together, but similar to the activities that we're asking the school to do in terms of their progress and their plans for spending the override money, probably in the fall, maybe just bring Mark in just to give us an update on the paving plan, specifically just to let us know. I know we'll have the detail in terms of how the additional funds will be used in the paving program. Snow and ice through the
Okay.
budget. And then the last thing I put down here is the bottom line, last statement, a recurring agenda item for a quarterly update on budgeted revenue compared to actual revenue collected.
Yeah.
That goes along with the trend reports that
Right.
we're talking about.
Mhm.
I just think that might be a good idea for us to at
Yep.
least get on the budget, on the
Agreed.
agenda quarterly, just so we can review trends and
Absolutely, yep.
suggest that's
Good, okay.
I think, just one last comment, I think
Yeah.
the transparency for this is key.
Yes.
We ask the voters to put a lot
Right.
of trust and faith in the town, to spend their money wisely and to do what we ask them to do. And so I really think it's extremely important that we track that progress and we report it back to the voters so that they can see what their money's actually going for and show that we're keeping to that promise. I think transparency is key.
Yeah,
it's a lot better than sitting down at town meeting trying to explain information that's gone a little awry
Yeah.
because of
Exactly.
reporting
Okay.
mechanisms.
Exactly.
all right. Good. Again, Bob, again, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
This is great, Bob, thank you.
Yeah. All right, before I go any further, Tom, do we have a signature page for the municipal relief?
We don't.
Okay, all right. We'll do those at the next, do those at,
I don't think we need one, do we?
well,
I don't think you
recorded.
really do.
I don't remember getting one for the
We need to get
municipal
you an
relief.
electronic signature now.
actually, is it just the reserve fund we,
Put it right in there.
Right.
we do it for? All right, never mind.
Trust us.
Yeah.
Never mind. All right, higher bond ratings. Whether, that's an issue that's been raised, particularly since we may have a major project down the road, a multi-million-dollar project, potentially, for a new school building. And are there any, ways that we could go from the AA that we're at, which is the second highest, to a AAA? And what would be required of the
Put more
town
money
to
in
do
the
that?
bank. Put more money in the bank.
Fund balance really is the number one thing that they look at. It's fund balance, fund balance, fund balance. One of the things.
Does that include both stabilization as well as free cash?
Yeah, it's really total cash that you have in the bank.
Mhm.
But for us, stabilization is the main item that you're looking at. I mean, to be able to say, well, here's how our fund balance is built. Boom, number one is X million dollars in this account.
Yeah.
It's always the first thing they look at.
Yeah.
You can maintain it in stabilization. You can maintain it in free cash. We tend to spend the free cash. At the end of the day, if you're
Yeah.
going to look to maintain that money, just put it into your stabilization. We'll hit in, I think, 2 years the point where we've repaid back to the stabilization fund what we borrowed.
Right.
It's a couple of years after that that we'll actually start to see some growth, because again, the rating agencies are looking more at how you're managing your money more than just the numbers that are on there. So, they'll say, well, that's great, you hit a certain number that you were at 5 years ago. The best case scenario would be if we had a year in a future year where we had really good free cash and we did $6 million in free cash. You say, okay, right off the bat, let's take $2 million and dump it in stabilization, get it up to that point, and then you're in good shape.
We did that a couple of years, probably about 5 years ago, Tom, we did that?
$1.5 million.
Yeah.
I stumbled into the idea, you all thought it was wise.
That was Tom's idea.
That's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we're not generating free cash yet at the level that we can really
Okay.
do
You're
that.
doing
Can
more
I ask a
stumbling.
question?
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
override, won't we naturally have that? So is it total stabilization fund? Because the override's gonna generate 700 plus 500, that's 1.2 extra million dollars.
It is
Would
that-
that bump up our stabilization balance?
When they do a snapshot, they'll look at it as a fund balance, but it's going to be spent, so it won't be there over the long term. So the best
Okay.
case scenario would just be do a big borrowing before we draw any of that money down. It's kind of like going to the bank and saying, look at all this money I got in the bank. I'm in really good financial shape, and then you get
Yeah.
your loan and you go spend the money. So believe me, I've tried to play all sorts of games with the
right.
the rating agencies.
But realistically, I think to go from a AA to a AAA, you're gonna have to add $10 million to your fund balances. So
Double A plus.
That's, yeah, that's not, thank you. That's not going to, that's
Not gonna happen overnight.
This is a 10-year process.
Right.
If we have a couple of years of really good free cash, it could get us there very, very quickly.
I think that was part of the plan, was it, when we presented the idea of the override to be able to build
We've made
that?
some changes to help us with free cash. If we can keep our local receipt projections reasonable, that generally helps generate free cash. We fixed the snow and ice issue, the schools fixed the snow and ice issue. We should have fewer transfers at town meeting out of free cash. Those things will help us with our free cash number. There's one or two more things we've got to correct in next year's budget, but those are all good things. It just might take us time. So we're just hoping, can we get there before we do that big borrowing in the middle school? It all depends on how free cash is in the next couple of years.
But there's a plan.
Next year's free cash number will be better than the free cash number we'll get in the fall. We'll be in a better situation.
Okay.
Who rates us? Is it S&P?
Yeah.
What percentage of towns have a AAA rating, and what's the rate impact to going from AA to AAA?
So I'd have to get there's numbers on the state website as to who has a AAA.
About 29%.
Yeah, that's a little higher than I thought, so about a quarter.
Okay.
Sometimes they're wealthier towns, but sometimes they're just towns that have managed themselves very well. So the impact would be a couple of points in overall borrowing for an $80 million project. You could be looking at over the life of that project, $5 or $6 million bucks.
Well, that might, it might be a good exercise maybe in the fall as well if Mark Good can be at the meeting as well. And maybe we can just get a model analysis just to paint the picture of what the difference would be. If we had an $80 million project and we were borrowing at the highest rating versus borrowing at the at our current rating, what's the impact in terms of dollars?
The other thing is to remember that it's while we have that big borrowing for the middle school coming up, it would be helpful for that over the 25-year that bond. We always have millions of dollars out there that we're borrowing not only every year but currently servicing our debt. So you hit that point where you get that AAA rating, and you know the taxpayer on day one won't see a difference in that middle school bill, but over time your borrowing cost starts to go down. So you're borrowing the same amount of money for less than we have in the budget, which means you can either do more if you want to do more, we can get more projects done, or it's just costing you less to do it. And we spend a couple $1 million a year servicing our debt, so having that better credit rating, that's a substantial.
I also think we're on the right path. We've done some really good things the last couple of years. I think that even just actions like documenting our financial policies and doing our financial forecasting, I think those are things I believe hopefully in the long term will also help us towards that goal. And this is just specific to the town bond rating. We also have a rating from the light department that's separate.
Correct. Okay. They're inexorably linked, but they are they are rated separately. Their rating unfortunately has gone down. We don't maintain a big enough fund balance for the light department. The unique way that we're structured with the light department benefits the town greatly, but it also comes at a cost. So that's something we also have a plan that we're building up the rate stabilization to help try to offset that and get that up there as well. But the two are inexorably linked.
Okay.
Yeah, they have had larger rate stabilization funds, I know, in the past. So, they've drawn them down the last 5 years or so. Okay.
Another good resource for us would be to have the treasurer bring in Peter Fraser, who's our financial advisor on bonds. So he deals with the rating agencies all the time. And he better than anyone probably knows the ways to make them happy.
Okay.
Just a general question, when does the tax bill for the override come?
The first quarter bills already went out. So.
And that included the override?
Yep.
I didn't look, it gets paid, I didn't even look at it, so.
It's only that first quarter, it's a quarter of the bill, so even if you had a $500 impact, your bill went up.
$125,
Yeah.
right, okay.
Yeah, which, brings me to a question on the tax bill that a couple people, brought to my attention, which is, even though it's not required by law, the amount of the override associated with the high school isn't specifically broken out, in the tax bill. And again, it's not required to do so, but people have asked what it is. Now, I know it also goes down every year, simply because of the way that we do things. But right. I mean, whether it's a matter of, formally putting it on the tax bill, that during this fiscal year you're going to be charged X. Or it could be done if it's difficult.
Well, they have the CPA on that. Right. Or if it's difficult to actually put on the tax bill, it can be shown separately to people, just so they know that I'm being charged $125 for this.
The actual process of adding it to the tax bill would cost programming money. And
right, but but then when you send the tax bill, you can have a little insert saying, for your house, you're being charged $120 this year for the override associated with the high school.
I'd rather just put it up on a website rather than printing all those things and mailing them, and then to
That's what-
specify it
something
to
to
be a
think
specific
about.
house, I mean, it's just, that would be.
Okay, just
a lot more
just
program.
something to think about.
Sure.
So it's adding
CPA.
additional
CPA is
information
on
to the
there.
tax bill.
What's the bond for the high school?
Westwood did it. They worked out all the overrides and what you paid per bill on it on the bottom of it.
No, what are we paying a year?
CPA is on it.
Yes, it is, but
Yeah,
So why would we be able to put on the other?
it's not required to be done. CPA is a separate part
$50 a
of
year as a high
money.
school.
So it has to be broken out separately, because it doesn't go as tax revenue, it goes into a
Right, but we've got
different.
two conversations going
The
on.
override for the high school adds X dollars per thousand if you bill.
Yeah, that's what you would do.
Yeah.
Or
Or even just print it on the bill, put it on the bottom of the
On the
bill.
bottom of
Get
the bill.
yourself in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you don't have to reprogram everything,
Yeah.
it's just a line, a text line on the bill.
I mean, just so people have a way of determining what they're paying on a given year related to the high school override.
Ballpark, the high school's about $5 a month.
Well,
An assessed house at 453?
Yeah.
really?
When does that go away?
20.
Another 18 years or so?
18 years.
2034?
2034, 2035 sounds about right.
Okay.
Goes
Okay.
down every year
So
though.
25 years, right?
If we just return to the discussion on bonding again.
Yeah.
25-year bond.
Excuse me, Bob, you have a question?
So, no,
Comment?
Tom actually just made a comment that I think is something we should probably consider. Perhaps at a fall meeting, maybe we should see if Mark and the financial analyst could attend a meeting and perhaps just
Yeah,
cover
that's
off on bond rating, both on utility as well as the town side.
You'll
Okay.
recall that longstanding members of the FinCom, that Peter came in before to explain, we did a refinancing that
Right,
generated a lot of cash for us.
okay. All right, any additional business? Tom, anything further from you?
No, sir.
Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Motion made and seconded, discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you very much.